Welcome to the Be Ready for the World conference. I'm Catherine, Teaching and Learning Lead from Cambridge University Press, and I'm delighted to join you today to take you through this session on effective teacher development. I am trained as a primary school teacher, and I worked in schools for many years and in school leadership. English has always been my particular area of expertise, and for the last 12 years, I've been a teacher educator. For the last 3 years, I've been working at the Press, and I'm really delighted to be here with you today. Before we start, I just wanted to go through a few points with you. You may have noticed that your microphones are muted. They will stay on mute as we go through the session, just to limit any background noise. And I'm also hosting this webinar from home, so if there are any issues with internet, please do bear with me. There'll be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, so please do put any questions that you'd like to ask in the Q&A box as we go through. There's somebody monitoring the box and they will be able to check those for you. You can also use the chat box for any general comments, but please be aware of the fact that there are quite a lot of people here today, so they might get lost in the chat box. It's better to put them in the Q&A. If you're having any technical difficulties with your sound or video, please let us know in the chat and we'll do our best to resolve them. We recommend, if you can, using your headphones for this session so that you can really get good sound quality. We're recording the webinar and we'll send you a link to the playlist after the conference, so please don't worry if you miss anything. If you're unable to see the Q&A icon where you might want to put your questions, please just hover your mouse at either the top or the bottom of your screen and hopefully that bar will appear. Okay, that's the housekeeping done. So I'm going to make a start. As I said, my name is Catherine Joy. I'm the Teaching and Learning Lead as part of the Professional Development Department at Cambridge University Press. And I'm based in the UK at the Cambridge office. The first thing that I'd like you to do today, if you can, is to join Mentimeter. If you haven't done this before, please go to menti.com. And in a moment, I'm going to give you a code to join our presentation. While you're doing that, I'm just going to tell you about an American study by Kraft and Pape, which identified 6 factors that need to be present in schools if we want to see an improvement in pupil outcomes and teacher development. We all want our children to be happy and engaged like this child here. And if we want to get to that point, we need to invest in our teachers. So the question I'm going to ask you today is, are these things present in your school? Have a quick look at that list, but it's also going to appear on Menti and on the next screen. So you should be able to get into Menti now using this code. The code is on the slide and hopefully also in the chat box. And you can select as many of these as you think are relevant in terms of what is present in your school. And hopefully, yeah, excellent. We'll see your answers coming through now. You can see that people are still contributing. Thank you to everybody who's engaging in that. Looks like lots of people have entered in lots of the responses, which is really great to hear. Okay, you can continue doing that if you wish to do so, but just because of time, I'm going to keep moving. So those are the things that we know make a supportive professional environment. And one of those, you'll have noticed, number 4, was professional development. Here at the professional development team in Cambridge, the quote on screen that you can see now from Professor Dylan Wiliam is our starting point. we believe that every teacher needs to improve, not because they're not good enough, teachers are doing a great job every day, but because they can be even better at what they do. I've been in teaching for nearly 25 years now, and I'm still learning about what good teaching and what good professional development look like. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Before we focus on the specifics of why and how we should offer good professional development, I just want to give a mention about the situation that we find ourselves in as a result of the COVID pandemic. At CUP, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the quality of our training. When you come to our training, you're coming for the content, but we also want to make sure that you go away having watched our trainers model the types of strategies that you can use in your classroom, starting the very next day, ideally. As this is what a lot of classrooms now look like, we wanted our online training to do the same. So we've realised that we need to upskill our trainers, and our online training now models using strategies and technology that can be used in the online classroom. I'm sure this is a very familiar picture to all of you. We're upskilling ourselves all the time and our trainers. We've got various examples of how we've been doing this at Cambridge University Press over the last year. It's been a massive period of change and development, and we feel it's really necessary to embed this online aspect because I'm sure it's here to stay, at least in some way. So, back to the first question of the day. Why should schools offer high quality professional development? This quote from Barber and Moorshed explains why. Very simply, the quality of the education that we provide cannot exceed the quality of the teachers who are providing it. In our team, we've looked at a wide variety of research to gather evidence about why schools should prioritise professional development. If we think about our learners and the impact that teachers have on them, one particularly good study is Sanders and Rivers. They looked at Tennessee's entire student population from the 2nd grade to the 8th grade, and they had data on who was taught by whom. And they found a significant correlation and large differences in how much children learned with different teachers. Previously, it had been thought that there was really not that much effect, and as long as teachers were properly qualified, they were pretty much comparable and children should progress at the same rates. But now we know that as long as you go to school, it doesn't really matter which school you go to, but it really matters which classroom you're in. The most critical difference is simply the quality of the teacher. So if we take a real life context for that, if we took 50 teachers, the children who were taught by the most effective teacher in that group would learn in 6 months what it took the average teacher to teach the class in 12 months, and an ineffective teacher might take 2 years to teach the same content. So we can really see how that would have an impact on pupil outcomes. In another study, researchers looked at why the world's top performing school systems perform so much better than others, and looked at some really high performing schools. What they discovered was that the things that really matter most are getting the right people to become teachers, and then crucially, developing them into effective instructors. Teachers need the opportunity to develop continuously. It's not a job that you can do, you get qualified, and then you just do it. You need to be keeping learning. We've also looked closer to home, as well as at these global studies. Giving teachers the opportunity to become great is something that we really believe in. So here was a piece of research done in some of our EML schools earlier. In fact, it was back in 2020, the summer of 2020. And we asked these teachers what their training needs were. The highest result was methodology. So teachers want help in learning how to teach. They also want, not surprisingly in an EML context, they also want language support and how to assess. This kind of information is really important to us. It shows us that PD is really important to our schools, and also it gives us the opportunity to really focus our professional development. I'm going to stop talking for a moment and just give you a second to pause and to think about that kind of background situation and why professional development might be important to your school. And please remember to put any questions in the Q&A for the end of the session. Okay. Moving on. So now we know why that we should engage in professional development. It's crucial to keep our teachers learning. But how can schools make the most of their teachers? For the rest of the webinar, we're going to look at what we know makes effective professional development for teachers and how this might be applied in any school context. Because we know that teachers are working in lots of different contexts in all parts of the world. First thing I want to do is ask you a question. In your school, how do you think that teachers and learners view ability and learning potential? Just take a moment to reflect on that. We know from talking to teachers and leaders that one element of effective professional development is teachers working in a culture of learning. You can see that here. Culture of learning is one of the key elements. And what that means is that everybody involved in the organisation has a growth mindset. You might have heard this phrase before. Some of you will be very familiar with the work of Carol Dweck at Stanford, who's done lots and lots of research on this. But essentially what it means is that we need to create a classroom culture in which everybody sees ability as incremental rather than fixed. So that means that you can look at your whole classroom of learners and think they can all do really well. They can all achieve to their maximum potential. You're not assuming that some of them are just fixed in the level of potential that they have. Again, Professor William puts it very succinctly, smart is not something you are, it's something you get. So that's one element of professional development. What do you think is happening in your school? If you go back to Menti now, please choose the statement that you most agree with. It's very small on my screen, but the three options are: teachers in my school demonstrate a growth mindset. I don't know if the teachers in my school have a growth mindset, or the teachers in my school do not demonstrate a growth mindset. So if you can, please go back to Menti and choose which statement you most agree with. So it's great to see that so far, the majority of people, almost, the middle one's catching up, the I don't knows, but lots of people do feel that teachers in their school have a growth mindset. Lots of people actually don't know. So there's an interesting thought to go back to school and perhaps have a conversation about that work, perhaps look up some of the Carol Dweck stuff and think, is growth mindset something that we promote in our school? Thank you to everybody who contributed to the Menti there. So if we know that one element of effective professional development is culture of learning, that's having a culture of learning where everybody thinks that everybody can get better at learning, what might the others be? So please stay on Menti. And this time, what we're asking you to do is to suggest up to 3 elements of effective professional development. So if one of them is culture of learning, what might the others be? This is a completely open question on Menti. You can just type in your answers. So we're going to get lots and lots of different answers here. What do you think needs to be present for effective professional development? Some great things coming in there. Time. Time is really big. Absolutely. You've got to have the time and the resources. Good to see school leaders coming in there. Good health conditions. Absolutely. Wonderful to see the word collaboration, communication, motivation. Really key. Thank you to everybody who's contributing there. Motivation, time and resources coming up large in the middle of the word cloud if you can't see it so well. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Sure, again, people will be continuing to add to that, but we'll move on. So yeah, interesting the things that have come up there. I'm going to show you now a selection of factors that we think need to be included in professional development. Some of them you'll recognise from our word cloud, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but it is a researched list. This comes from the Teacher Development Trust here in the UK, who spent a lot of time looking at what the factors for effective professional development might be. And they came up with these 8 as a starting point. Like I say, that doesn't mean that there aren't others, but we're going to start with these 8 today. So you can see culture of learning there as the one that we've already looked at. And then the others are feedback, sustained, so meaning over time, school-based where possible, although that's obviously harder at the moment than it has been in the past, subject-specific, recognises different experience levels of teachers, includes external expertise, and is collaborative. And that was certainly something that came up on our word cloud. And collaborative is the one that I'm going to start with. With the time that we've got left today, I'm going to look at some of these elements and what they might look like in practice. So a key element of effective PD is collaboration. You can see here some teachers that I worked with in Turkey, and they were really collaborating together. They were a really great, motivated focus group to work with. They had been given the time, crucially, as lots of you picked up on, and they enjoyed what they were doing. This was school-based because it was pre-COVID, but we also know that this can happen online. This Zoom here that you can see above the photograph is a school in Colombia who were working collaboratively together, learning about primary maths. Collaboration can also happen as part of a wider professional community, which might include that external expertise recommended as well. One example of this at Cambridge University Press is our teacher support service, which actually launches this week. And some of you may find that you're going to be involved with that. This offers the teachers a chance to work with other teachers who are using our resources around the world on a social media type platform. And we know that also this gives teachers the opportunities to draw on that external expertise, perhaps with one of our Cambridge mentors. And it's also a platform where teachers can get feedback because it's a conversation that goes on the remote platform. So collaboration in an online world, and it can be across the world. One thing that we really know about professional development is that teachers really need to feel that it's linked to what they're doing in the classroom. I know as a teacher, I sat in some training sessions when I was a teacher thinking, this has no relevance to what I'm doing in the classroom. And I don't have the time to spend on professional development that doesn't link to actually what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So we really try to make sure that that's the case. As a publisher of educational resources, we support teachers from all stages and through lots of subjects. Sometimes teachers might want to work together on generic elements of pedagogy, such as assessment for learning, or the use of learning intentions and success criteria as seen here on the screen. And sometimes that kind of information can be useful for lots of teachers. However, we also know that sometimes teachers will really benefit from learning with other teachers who teach the same subject as them, where the content and the approaches can be really focused on exactly what you're teaching. So we should now be able to launch a poll so that you can tell us which subjects do you teach. And that's a multiple choice poll. Okay, we'll just give you a little bit of time to vote on the poll, and then hopefully we'll be able to share the results with you so that we can just get a sense of which kind of teachers we've got across. We've given the options as being English as a second language, maths and science, because those are the ones that we often work with, but we know that there'll be people teaching all kinds of subjects. So please tick the other box if that doesn't describe you. Okay, are we able to share the results of the poll now? Great, thank you very much. Okay, so we've got the majority of people there, nearly half of our attendance today. So 116 people out of 241 people who had voted as teaching English as a second language. Not surprisingly, as we know that that's a huge part of our market. But really great to see that we have a widespread, and all those other people, it would be interesting to know what other subjects you do teach. So if you'd like to tell us actually which subjects you do teach, please feel free to pop that in the chat box. So, as I said, we do work with a lot of teachers who teach English. Here's our Global English course, which is designed for English as a second language. Also teachers who teach maths, science, and first language English. But as I said, lots of others too. And in terms of professional development, our Preparing to Teach course, which again is something that's new and will be launching soon, offers teachers a chance to be trained in how to use our resources in their particular subject. So really meeting that subject-specific need that we know that makes effective professional development. Something else that you'll remember from that list of effective PD is sustained. So thinking about development over time. This is Rosaline. Rosaline works in India. I know that earlier in my career, I did lots of one-off training sessions, and it quickly became clear that these have really limited impact. So I could have a training session with Rosaline and tell her lots of things that I know and then go away. But I know that it won't have a huge amount of impact unless I follow up with her later and keep engaged in that process. If we want the PD to have an impact on teachers and learners, we need to invest ideally in a long-term strategy. Rosaline attended our Preparing to Teach course on how to deliver mathematics. And she is now sharing those materials through an online masterclass and in a session in her school with the teachers in her school. They'll then share their feedback with her, try the things out in the classroom, and then she'll come back to us to discuss what's happened. So it's over several months with classroom application of the ideas as part of the process. So we know that through being sustained, school-based where possible, and with that round of feedback, this can be really effective professional development. This is another example of sustained development, this time run over an academic year. We've offered these types of courses here at Cambridge University Press in the past, and I've delivered them in other contexts as well. And sometimes that working across an academic year with coming to training, going back and trying things out, coming back, really can have an impact. And we've seen that both on teacher development and confidence and on learner outcomes. As we saw when we looked at our research into our EML schools, we know that learning about teaching methodology is a key training need for lots of teachers. We know, however, that as professional development providers, we need to recognise that teachers have different experience levels and different starting points. Coming back to this point here, recognises different experience levels of teachers. Our teaching skills roadmap offers teachers the opportunity to track their own professional development progress. So it's a progression of skills at 3 different levels where teachers can look at it and think, where am I on this roadmap? And how can I improve my own practice? And here's an example of that there. We can see what this looks like at level 1, at level 2, and at level 3. And it doesn't matter if you're starting at level 1 or level 3. What's important is that you identify where you are and then can think about moving forward. And ideally, you'll be able to do all of these things, starting at level 1, adding in level 2, and adding in level 3. There's also videos to help support teachers with what that might look like in the classroom. Something else that I've been doing recently to really consider effective professional development is working with some teachers in Indonesia. They have a lower language level than perhaps some of the teachers we work with in other parts of the world. And so we've been coming up with ideas as to how we can really support those teachers with a lower level of English. So we are really trying to start the professional development at their own language level and at their experience level. And that's requiring us to make some changes to the things that perhaps we've done in the past. So if we go back to our 8 elements of professional development, we've had a quick look at some of those and what they might look like in your schools. And remember, we've got our teacher roadmap, teaching skills roadmap, our teacher support service, and our preparing to teach courses, which are just examples of what this might look like in your school, although you may well be engaged in other professional development from other places. If you do want to find out more from us, this is our website address, or you can contact your local representative if you have one. And it may be that my co-hosts here today might be able to provide this website in the chat box, or you'll be able to get this recording after. So just before I finish and we think about some questions, I'd like you to go to the chat box now and just think, you came here today to learn something about professional development. And are you going away feeling like, number one, like, yeah, we've cracked this, we really know what we're doing, we're great at PD, and we're really offering our teachers, or I'm being offered some really fantastic PD? Or are you going away today with your head in your hands thinking, gosh, I don't get offered any of that, or my teachers really don't get the opportunity to do this stuff? And obviously you could be somewhere along the scale. You might be right bang in the middle. Do you know what? We're doing okay. So just put a number in the chat box. There are lots of you here, so there's going to be lots of numbers appearing in the chat box, but to just give us a sense of where your journey of professional development is. Oh, just seen a 9 and a 10 go zipping past. Yep, some 9s, but also a few 3s as well. So a real range, as we might expect with so many participants today. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. And I think we should have some questions and answers.
Catherine, thank you. We've had some excellent questions coming in as you've been going along. So we've got a question that's come in from Sadif. Thank you so much for your question, saying if as a school we're doing all the required things that need to be done to develop teachers effectively, yet we cannot see the results. So clearly in terms of classroom output, what are we not doing right? I think that's a really interesting question, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, if you feel like you're doing all of the things that we're talking about and all of those things are going on, but I think, you know, often it's quite easy for those things to kind of become a little bit of a tick list. And sometimes in that situation, that's what's happened, is that superficially, we might feel like we're doing those things. You know, we're offering teachers the opportunity, we're giving them some time, and we're bringing in somebody from outdoors to help them to do it. And we're making sure that, you know, it's over time. We're not just doing one-off sessions, but sometimes it requires a little bit more of drilling down and actually going into the classroom. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in lesson study over the last few years. And that's something where, you know, you actually sometimes have to take a step back and go into the classroom and really look at the learners. So kind of stop looking at the teachers and look at the learners and think, actually, what's happening for them? Because we might be doing everything right for the teachers and the teachers might outwardly appear to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. But when we look at what's happening with the learner, for whatever reason, they're not accessing what we want to do. So it may be that in that case, you need to switch your focus from your teachers onto your learners to see, and that might give you some insight into what the teachers haven't got or aren't doing or could do even better.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you again for that question. Okay, what else have we got coming in here? So Maritza's asking, how can you incorporate professional development into a weekly schedule when teachers already have quite a full schedule and a lot going on?
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, that's the $1 million question. And as a school leader, you know, I was always battling with that. You know, teachers don't want to be coming to meetings at the end of the day to learn about something else. So, you know, it is really hard, but I think it's just about prioritizing it and really thinking about what will work. You know, can you take a day? can you have, I mean, we call them inset days here in the UK, teacher training days. So rather than trying to do a little bit after school when teachers are really tired, thinking about taking that day at the beginning of a term where you can actually really focus on it. And also then trying to make it, as classroom based. And that's what I was saying earlier about it's got to be linked to classroom practice. Because the last thing we want to do, and this is a real key thing for us at the Press, is we don't want to add to your workload. We want it to be what you're doing in the classroom. So, for example, when we work with teachers on planning, yes, the planning might take a bit longer to start with, but ultimately it's designed to make your life easier. Because as you get better at planning and our resources are supporting you with that, actually it's going to improve and it's going to take less time for you to teach good lessons. So yeah, I mean, I'm not pretending I have a silver bullet for that one. It's tough. I do think it's about, being smart as well, making good use of the time, because sometimes we can spend time doing stuff that's not actually going to have a huge impact. So really thinking, in terms of the limited time that you do have available, how can we best make the use of it?
Excellent. We've had a really interesting question as well from Cassandra. Cassandra's asking for a little bit of clarification around how a learning objective differs from learning intention.
Yeah, absolutely. So the learning objective is the overarching idea of what do we want these learners to learn. So in our context, they come from Cambridge Assessment, Cambridge International. So we take them from the Cambridge curriculum. So the learning objective might be something like learners need to learn to write a story. We know that that's something that they need to learn to do within the English curriculum. But the learning intention for the lesson might be that the learner is just going to learn how to describe a character. So it's something much more manageable that can be taught in one lesson or a sequence of lessons, whereas the learning objective is the broader outcome that we're looking for within the subject.
Okay. Thank you. We've had a question in from Adi Yinka. Thank you. Just to share the link to the online community of EAL teachers that you mentioned, Catherine. If we could just pop that in the chat at some point, that would be great.
So that's the teacher support service.
Okay, so you will find that on the
website.
Yeah, that's
so you're looking, Adianka, for the teacher support service. If you look for that, that's what we're talking about there.
Perfect. We have a relatively open question here from Fazana, who's asking, how can professional development be most effective? Which I guess is what's at the kind of core of this session.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think it's, if you've got limited time and limited resources, if we think about that teaching skills roadmap, it's about, what do your teachers need most? And that's why we really like working with teachers and saying to them, what do you need? Because it's not a one size fits all. Even in a very small school, with only kind of 8 or 10 teachers, you're still going to have people who have different needs. So in that situation, if we're trying to identify, it might be that every teacher just has one thing that they want to try and improve on. And also recognizing that it's a slow process. Like I say, I've been in this game for 25 years and I still, I'm continually learning. So it's not like suddenly tomorrow we're all going to be, even better teachers than we were. It takes time. And so just, appreciating that it's going to be small steps. And there may be times, like I'm sure over the last year, for lots of schools, professional development has had to take a bit of a back seat. Even though actually people have been doing it on a day-to-day basis, they've been upskilling themselves on how to teach remotely. But in terms of kind of, formal or official PD, it's been really hard because we've had so many other things going on. But hopefully now teachers are able to just take a little bit of a step back and think, okay, what's the most important thing about prioritizing? And in the end, that needs to come from, where do you want your learners to be? What are learners not doing that you want them to be doing?
I think the idea of professional development as kind of an ongoing journey rather than a destination is a really interesting one, and that's applicable to any kind of any career, I think, but particularly teaching, because it evolves and changes so much
all the time. Absolutely.
Okay, we've got a question in from Asma asking, is there any online tool or checklist to follow up on professional development?
So, I mean, there's all our professional development products now, Emma, as you know. So the in terms of a checklist, if you mean the kind of the 8 areas that I was looking at, like say that comes from the Teacher Development Trust here in the UK. But if you're looking for something to kind of support your teachers or you as a teacher, then our Teaching Skills Roadmap is going to be the best tool for that. And that's due to be published at the end of April. So, you know, go to the website and have a look and see all the different things that we're offering. And I think you could be able to register interest in those areas.
Wonderful, thank you. And I can see a few more questions coming in through here. So we've got a question from Aisha, who's asking, how can we make online teaching interesting as the output's very low from the learner as compared to input?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is something that we've been looking at for us as a team as well, and you know, and a lot of us are parents, so we all know, you know, what that looks like at home. And again, I think I don't know if the phrase "not throwing the baby out with the bathwater" is common across the world, but it's, you know, it's just remembering that a lot of what works in the classroom can work online. Obviously, some things don't, but just kind of not feeling like you've got to do everything different. You know, when again, thinking about an English example, I saw a really great online lesson where children, you know, had a little writing frame to write on. So, you know, that's something I would do in the classroom where, you know, they've just got a little writing frame and they're filling in the ends of the sentences. This is kind of second grade. And thinking, actually, you know, that is something that would happen in the classroom, but that learners can do at home as well. And then they're showing their replies on their camera. Again, you know, nobody's pretending that it's not difficult to engage learners, particularly the older they get. And something that from some webinars that I've watched, I really recommend Teach Like a Champion, if you're interested in this, based in the US, but they have some great webinars and things going on about remote and online teaching. And one of their key phrases is intentionality. So go into the lesson knowing what you want the children to do, what you want the learners to do. So don't kind of leave it, well, let's see what happens and see how they respond. You know, set it out at the beginning. I am going to expect everybody to show me a piece of writing to the camera in this lesson, so that the expectation is there, so that they can't just switch off. Or, you know, or I'm going to expect everybody to answer at least one question, either on the microphone or on the camera today. So have real intentionality about how you expect the learners to engage and set that out at the beginning of the lesson.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's potentially been really challenging for teachers, having to adapt really suddenly to a completely different
absolutely huge expectation. Yeah I absolutely take my hat off. It's very easy for me to sit here, you know, talking about what could and might work, but you know, you guys are the ones in the classrooms every day, and yeah, nobody's suggesting it's easy, but we know you're doing an awesome job. Yeah, well done, teacher out there.
I see how hard my children's teachers work to get them to engage and to provide meaningful feedback and all of those sorts of things. Yeah. I think it's been really, really challenging. We've got a great question come in. Somebody here is sharing a challenge that they're having with experienced teachers who are kind of almost demotivating newer teachers because they're like, well, this is my way of doing it right, and this is how we've always done it. Have you got any suggestions on how to overcome that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a classic, isn't it? It's the kind of the cynical older teacher who, you know, has been here a long time and has probably seen things come round and has worked really hard. And it was like, oh, you know, I did this 10 years ago. And yeah, we know what it feels like. And it's that key word, if you remember from the word cloud, it's about motivation. And again, I go back to, you know, what do teachers want to learn? You know, what does that teacher who is feeling a bit, you know, demotivated and fed up, you know, is there something that we can offer that teacher to do something a bit different? You know, I had the really pleasurable experience of working with teachers on a reading project before I came to work at the press. And we used to get those teachers come and, you know, be kind of like, oh, here we go again, more training on English, I've done this. And there it was the quality of the text that we were offering, because they would read these books and they would see the learners really engaged in these books. And it was suddenly like, oh, actually, yes, you know, it can be new and exciting again. And I think that, you know, a lot of our teachers will have that experience with our new publications as well, having looked at our, you know, new exciting textbooks. You know, the English ones have really high quality texts in to engage the children. And I think it's, you know, it's if we go back to growth mindset, you've got to go into it thinking, I can learn something here. You know, it's, you know, again, I'm not suggesting it's easy, but I think for those teachers, it's just, you know, trying to show them that there might be something that they can be excited and engaged about. You know, that it's easy to feel like you've seen it all before, but actually the world is changing very rapidly, and there might be something out there that is going to engage their learners and engage them.
Excellent. And we've got a question in from Wallace, just asking if you can suggest some further reading for effective PD.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about a kind of an easy one. I mean, there's so many publications out there. I mean, John Hattie is always a really good place to start, just because he's done quite a lot of meta-analysis of other people's work. So it gives you a really good overview. His kind of famous work is Visible Learning, and he wrote Visible Learning for Teachers. So it's about pedagogy rather than PD, but it shows us what's really important in the classroom. Like I said, look at Carol Dweck. Her work on growth mindset, I think, is really fundamental to what's going on. And if you haven't got that right, if you haven't got that classroom culture, you're not going to do it effectively. So that, yeah, there are definitely two places to start.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I'm just having another look so I can see a lot more questions have come in. Okay, Angelina's asking, in your opinion, what are at least top 3 professional training aside from IT that teachers need in general now that teaching shifted online? So now that we're seeing a kind of a changing landscape, what are the emerging skills that teachers need?
Yeah, I think we go back to this idea of engagement. That's certainly the thing that keeps coming up for us whenever we do this. And, we've just talked about it, Emma, as well. How do you engage those learners? So I think, we've pretty much cracked the technology. Here we all are. We're pretty, lots of people very proficient at using these tools. But now we need to kind of switch it into how can we use the tool to engage the learners? What different ways are there of doing that? So, and again, I recommend Teach Like a Champion, the US, because that's something they've really looked at, is these very specific skills. So like, the waterfall idea, where you ask a question, but everybody doesn't reply, you wait, and then everybody puts their answer into the chat box. So there's like a waterfall of answers so that the children kind of see them coming. So they've got these very specific ideas about how to make it a bit more interesting for the learners. So I think engagement is absolutely key. And then the other one that I think is going to be crucial is assessment. So, let's talk to our teachers about how we can really effectively assess online. What's that going to look like? Because, we all know as teachers, assessment for learning is going on in the classroom all the time. You're walking around the classroom, you're looking at what learners are doing, you're talking to them, and that's the best kind of assessment for learning. And suddenly you've lost that. So again, having to be really intentional about how are we going to assess these learners in an online context. So if I was running a school now, that's what I'd be looking at: engagement and assessment.
Catherine, I think that's brilliant. I'm afraid we're pretty much out of time there, so I think we're going to have to leave that as the last question. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining and for leading the talk and for providing such insights. We will be sharing a recording of Catherine's session with everybody on our YouTube channel, but thank you very much, everybody. We're going to close it there for the day, and I hope to see you in some sessions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.